Sometimes emotional unsafety. It doesn't sound harsh at all. Actually, it often sounds completely normal. We're talking about small phrases, quick, almost invisible reactions, a defensive joke here or there. They're just words people repeat so often that they completely stop noticing what those words are actually protecting. And over time, it's these normal-sounding phrases that quietly, almost secretly, shape the emotional safety inside our relationships.
It's a pretty profound realization when it hits you. Not every emotionally unsafe person looks emotionally unsafe. I mean, many of them are incredibly kind people. They're responsible, they're funny, they're the ones helping out. Some of them genuinely love the people around them with absolutely all their heart. But emotional unsafety? It often reveals itself through these tiny, unconscious communication patterns, just little phrases that act as a shield to protect them, but unintentionally end up building a massive wall between them and the people they love the most.
Because right beneath the surface of these everyday words, there are deep, hidden protections at play. We're talking about fear, a deep sense of shame, emotional self-protection, and, maybe most of all, the deep, lingering fear of rejection. Honestly, most people don't learn these patterns consciously. They inherit them emotionally. It's like a nervous system reflex. Take Rachel and her husband Ethan, for example. Just a regular Tuesday night, a quiet, everyday argument started over something really small. Ethan simply shared that he felt hurt because she had casually dismissed him earlier in front of some friends.
Now, instead of hearing him, Rachel instantly crossed her arms and said, "Well, I guess I just can't do anything right then." And just like that, the room went completely silent. But not because Ethan was attacking her. It was because the entire energy of the conversation suddenly completely shifted. It moved away from addressing his very real feelings and pivoted entirely toward managing her sudden emotional discomfort.
Psychologically speaking, what happened in that room was an emotional survival instinct. It's this incredibly common moment when emotional unsafety speaks before self-awareness even has a chance to catch up. And I really want to validate this for you, because moments exactly like this happen inside relationships all the time. It is not because people are manipulative or playing the villain. It happens because, in that split second, fear simply takes over their nervous system.
So let's look at the first common phrase, "I guess I'm just a terrible person." This one usually pops up right in the middle of getting feedback or during a conflict. Now, on the surface, it sounds like an admission of guilt, right? But it actually isn't a sign of true accountability at all. What it really is a manifestation of intense, overwhelming shame.
The hidden subtext here is what's absolutely crucial to understand. The person feels so emotionally overwhelmed by the criticism that their nervous system basically jumps to an extreme. Instead of staying grounded and connected to the conversation, they collapse emotionally. And suddenly the other partner is left feeling this immense, heavy pressure to abandon their own honest expression just so they can step in and comfort the person who is reacting.
Or consider another really common deflection. Phrase number 2. Whatever, it's fine. Have you ever noticed how sometimes people will say this while they are visibly, obviously upset? Their tone changes abruptly. You can literally see their body language completely close off. Emotionally, they've just shut the door and stopped speaking honestly to you.
And this happens because vulnerability simply feels way too unsafe in that moment. So, rather than expressing their hurt directly, which feels vulnerable, they emotionally withdraw while putting up the pretense that everything is perfectly okay. But here's the reality of that situation. Retreating into silence doesn't magically remove the emotional tension in the room. It actually deepens it, because expressing their hurt directly just feels far too risky for their nervous system to handle.
Sometimes unsafety disguises itself as a casual observation. Phrase 3, "You're too sensitive." It sounds so offhand, so matter-of-fact. But emotionally, it completely and utterly invalidates the other person's internal reality.
The underlying truth here is that many emotionally unsafe people say, "You're too sensitive," because their own emotional discomfort is what's actually overwhelming them. If your feelings create guilt or tension or this heavy sense of internal responsibility for them, well, minimizing your feelings quickly becomes their go-to defense mechanism. It's not always intended as cruelty. Often it is just a deeply ingrained form of nervous system protection.
Then we have the emotional camouflage of humor. Phrase 4, "I was just joking." Look, humor is a wonderful thing in a relationship, but sometimes humor becomes a very convenient hiding place. This is especially true for folks who are absolutely terrified of genuine vulnerability.
The pattern usually plays out like this. They say something genuinely hurtful, you react honestly to it, and suddenly in a panic, that statement is hastily rebranded as a joke. Why? Because admitting the actual emotional impact of their words feels way too threatening. So humor becomes an instant escape route, a quick way out of emotional responsibility.
Moving on to phrase 5, there is a deep, tragic irony in the words, "I don't care." Because, more often than not, it is said by the very people who actually care the most deeply. But caring openly, well, that can feel incredibly emotionally risky. For them, detachment becomes a much safer alternative to vulnerability. This is especially true for people who learned in their past that having emotional needs only ever led to disappointment. So sometimes, "I don't care" really translates to a much more painful truth. I care so much, but I just don't feel emotionally safe enough to admit it to you.
Another subtle form of unsafety is chronic avoidance. Phrase 6, can we not do this right now? Now let's be honest, timing absolutely matters in relationships. Not every heavy conversation needs to happen immediately in the heat of the moment. But emotionally unsafe people will often use this exact kind of avoidance repeatedly, like clockwork, whenever any discomfort appears.
And again, it's not because they are malicious. It is because emotional tension just floods and overwhelms their nervous system, triggering this urgent, desperate need to escape. The real danger here, though, is that chronic evasion prevents any chance of repair. It just allows unresolved emotions to quietly, silently pile up inside the relationship day after day, year after year. And finally, we arrive at the ultimate emotional survival habit, phrase 7. 2 words that many people don't even recognize as emotional self-protection. I'm fine. Sometimes, these 2 simple words carry entire hidden histories of repressed pain. You see, many people learned very, very early in life that expressing pain simply felt unsafe. So, what did they do? They adapted. They became emotionally self-contained, highly independent, super low maintenance. But internally, they actually stopped expecting emotional understanding from others a long time ago. And eventually, "I'm fine" becomes much less of a truthful answer and a whole lot more of a protective shield.
Let's go back to that dim, quiet apartment with Rachel and Ethan. For a while after she shut down, neither of them spoke, just heavy silence. But then, something shifted. Rachel finally said something deeply honest. She looked at Ethan and told him, "My parents used to make every disagreement feel huge growing up." She softened and said, "If someone criticized me, it felt like rejection. So now I get defensive before I even realize I'm doing it."
That single moment of vulnerability, it changed everything for them. It shifted the dynamic entirely away from reacting from fear, which, as we've seen, just breeds emotional defensiveness, and moved them toward creating space through self-awareness. It allowed for real, grounding, emotional honesty. Because emotionally unsafe communication patterns are rarely about bad intentions. Most of the time, they're just old nervous system protections that completely predate your current relationship.
But as we reflect on this, it's absolutely vital to remember, compassion doesn't remove accountability. That is a crucial takeaway here. Having compassion for someone's triggers doesn't mean their harmful words don't matter. They absolutely do matter. But understanding the underlying fear beneath those defensive behaviors, that creates compassion without erasing accountability. It is the true, grounded starting point for real relational healing.
Because healing isn't about perfection. It is not about reaching this magical state where you never say the wrong thing again. Truly emotionally safe relationships are not relationships where nobody ever gets triggered. No, they are relationships where 2 people slowly become safe enough to stay emotionally honest with each other in the messy, imperfect aftermath of conflict.
Before we close, if today's message resonated with you and you want to go deeper into transforming your marriage through self-awareness and emotional understanding, I've written a Kindle book called Harmonious Marriage: Elevate Your Marriage with Self-Awareness. It's designed to help couples break negative patterns and build emotional safety step by step. You can find it in the description below. And if you're drawn to ancient wisdom applied to modern relationships, explore my second book, Mantras of Love, based on Hindu wisdom. It blends timeless principles with practical guidance for real-life connection. Both links are in the description. Take your next step toward healing today. And if these conversations help you feel more emotionally understood, I invite you to gently hit subscribe to ReframeUs. We share weekly emotional storytelling and relationship psychology insights, all designed to help your relationships feel emotionally safe again. Because sometimes, the deepest healing begins when people finally stop asking, "Who's wrong?" and start asking, "What fear is speaking underneath these words?"